there was since we're on that subject, and this kind of go along with my lesson for the kids tonight. There's a man that I know he was a sheriff of his county, good friend of ours, friend of our family, and he was a county here in West Virginia. His son was on the football team, high school football team, and this was 20 years ago. Yeah, probably about 20 years ago, more. Right? Maybe more than that. Boy, his son ended up in Afghanistan, so maybe closer to 30 years ago. Anyway, his dad, the sheriff, was also the assistant coach on the high school football team. His boy was an outstanding athlete. All his kids liked him, So first day of practice, one of the boys showed up with an earring. And this was 30 years. Now it's more common for boys to have earrings, but 30 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of boys in rural West Virginia that had earrings. So this boy showed up with an earring, and the coach, sheriff / dad / coach said, take that earring out. They're going on the football field to practice. He said, take that earring out. He said, I ain't going to do it. You can't make it. Yeah, he can make it. He's a big, stocky guy. He's a sheriff, Vietnam veteran. I mean, everything that he was supposed to be as sheriff. And the boy was like, he said the boy was built like Atlas. He thought he could do it, run over everybody, had run over other teachers and stuff at the school. And so he said, you're not going out on the ball field with that earring in your ear. And the boy just went to shove by him. So he grabbed him and went to grab the ear. And as he went to grab the ear, the boy kind of fell, and he ripped the boy's ear as the earring went to the ground. The earring came out. He thought, boy, I'm in trouble now. This is the first day of practice in the summertime. I'm in trouble now. Here comes a lawsuit or whatever. The mom approached him next day. Next day, he's not at football practice. He's working his regular job during the day as sheriff downtown. And the mom approached him. If I can remember the story, their mom approached him, and he said, because it's a small town like Mayberry, everybody knows everybody. He saw her coming. He said, here it comes, and she said, I want to thank you. He said, yeah. I've been trying to get him not to wear that thing because 30 years ago in that community, the only guys who wore earrings were the drug dealers, and she didn't want her boy to be one of them. And if I remember right, Dad wasn't in the picture, and the mom was raising the boy, and the boy was getting in trouble, and was heading that direction. And it changed his life, changed that kid's life because someone stood up to him, not let him bull by just because he was an outstanding athlete built like Atlas. Whatever. He said, "I thought, man, here comes a lawsuit." Anyway, all right. Before we do anything else, I want to go over the lesson that I had with the kids. I'm going to ask you all some questions. Now we're running kind of late, so we might even get to this on. We'll get to prayer in just a minute. For the last 2 months, we've been talking about one person back here on Wednesday night. And I'll bring the lesson in here on Wednesday night for the kids' lesson. What's the man's name we've been talking about? Anybody remember? Well, Jonathan knows it because he just heard the lesson. Jonathan goes back here and gets the lesson and gets a double dip because he comes in. He goes back here and sits with the kids. He gets it and he comes back in here. Abraham. Okay? What is Abraham's name before God changed it to Abraham? Abram. David's getting the bonus questions tonight. How about that? Okay. What's Abram's wife's name? Abraham, his wife's name was Sarah. What was her name before God changed her name? Sarai. Very good, Charlie Moss. Okay, so these names to us, they don't mean Sarah, Abraham. We don't. They're just names in the Bible to us. But Abram means exalted father, right? Those names had meaning, different meaning. Abram meant exalted father. Abraham, when God changed his name to Abraham, it meant father of a multitude. How many kids did they have when God changed his name to father of a multitude? 0. So Abraham was walking around telling everybody, God changed my name to Abraham. Abram was the exalted father. Hey, haven't called him exalted father, doesn't have any kids, right? And they've been calling him exalted father for 80 years. He still didn't have any kids, right? So then Sarai, how do you want to pronounce Sarai? What's that word mean? Does anybody know? It means contentious. Okay. God changed her name to what? Sarah. What's Sarah mean? Anybody know? Jonathan don't answer because Jonathan's always back there, but he already forgot. It means princess. Okay, so God changed her name from. The Bible tells us she was a beautiful woman. Okay, that's mentioned a couple times in Genesis. She was very beautiful to look at, easy to look on. God changed her name from contentious to princess. God changed Abram's name from Abram, father, exalted father, to Abraham, father of a multitude. They still don't have kids. Okay, so God comes to Abraham. Now, after changing his name to Abraham, said, "You and Sarah are going to have a baby." What did Abraham do? Anybody know? Most time when God spoke, Abraham just bowed to the ground and listened. Right? Anybody know what he did when he said, "You and Sarah are going to have a baby"? He laughed. The Bible says he fell on his face and laughed. Okay? So what's their son's name? Abraham, Isaac. What's Isaac mean? Anybody know? It means he laughed. Or laughter. Okay, now here's all those names. We don't use the names for stuff, for much now, other than Trey, Jonathan the Third, or whatever you want to put out. So we use those names. My middle name is Coulter, with Coulter, is named after my dad's cousin, or my cousin, his cousin's husband that was his Uncle Colt. Was Colt? Everyone called him Colt, but Coulter was his real name. But it also means it's a farming tool. A coulter is a farming tool. Okay? So I was named after a farming tool. A couple weeks ago, Tammy and I were at my aunt's funeral, and I met my cousin, who's my age. She's 60. When growing up, she had a horse named Joe, and now I got to meet her son named Joe. So in the conversation with him, after being around long enough that I can tell jokes or be funny, I said, "Joe, did you know you were named after your mother's horse?" He said, "Yeah, I know." She also another cousin. But anyway, he said, "Yeah, I know I was named after a horse." Okay. When God called Abraham and told Abraham, God spoke to him several times. But when God was given a reason in Genesis chapter 18, verse 19, God doesn't have to answer anybody for anything, but he tells us a lot of times why he does what he does. This is what he said about Abraham. "I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him." So Abraham, if I picture this correctly, because remember that last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about them going down and rescuing Lot and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom and different places. He has 216 men that are his ranchers, we would say, shepherds, and they keep the sheep and cattle and oxen, but they are also trained in battle. So this Abraham must have been a very disciplined man, okay? To have his 216 men to go after however many thousand it was and defeat those enemies and win the battle and bring Lot back or rescue those people. God says, "I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him." Then this disciplined man names his son Laughter. Laughter. He names his son, he laughs, or laughter. Okay, just think about it. So this disciplined man names his son Laughter, and I've thought about this a lot, but I haven't really put all the names together until this week. Most people that I know that raise their children up with a strict discipline, he will command his children and his household after him, whether it's just his children or his children and his grandchildren or the people that he works with, and he commands this discipline everywhere he goes. They have laughter about it. Almost everybody I know that has a strict discipline about them. There's some people who are just rude, crude people. Their discipline is just because someone's annoying to them or whatever. But most people that live their life within the boundaries of this discipline, they have a lot of joy and laughter. And we're going to guess that the man's 100 years old and his son's born. He's going to go laugh or he's going to cry, right? And Sarah's 90 years old and the son's born. I mean, when she heard God speaking to Abraham and saying, Sarah's going to have a baby, she was in the tent door and she laughed. And God looked at her and said, "Why'd you laugh?" She said, "I didn't laugh." "Oh, no, I didn't laugh." So she snickered about it. She's 90 years old. "I'm going to have a baby." You sure? Okay. Within the boundaries of doing right, there's a lot of fun. Okay? And in my mind, Tammy made this observation 2 weeks ago. My aunt died. She made this observation about our family. And this is my dad and his siblings, my mom and her siblings. Okay, of the 11 couples, they all were very disciplined in how they raised their children. I think every one of them raised their kids up in church, continually in church. Kids singing in the choir, parents teaching Sunday school, whatever. I mean, they all had this discipline about them, but they all laughed all the time. They had a lot of joy in their life. Also, Tammy made this observation. She said, "How long?" My Aunt Terry just died 2 weeks ago. What year did Uncle Jay die? And I said 1992, because that's the last time we saw. 30 years ago was when we saw some of his kids. Okay, 30 years. She said none of them ever remarried. Of those 11 couples, these are my parents, my aunts, and uncles. None of them ever remarried. And my grandmother lived, I think, like 40 years after my grandfather died. And none of them ever remarried. Why was that? And tonight I'm putting this together with the lesson, with the lesson for the kids. I didn't go through that parents part, the uncles, aunts, and uncle part with the kids back here. But I thought about this, and I thought, these people, strict discipline all their life, doing the right thing, doing within the boundaries of right, they're doing the right thing all the time, and they have all kinds of fun. As children, when we were around either sets of the family, we laughed. We weren't around them all the time. We were around them enough, but we laughed and had a good time and lots of fun all the time. But there was always a discipline about it. Okay, I mean, there was always boundaries, and you can have a great life. You got small children, and your children are small and not so small, and so we got grandkids that we influence, right? Within the boundaries of right, it seems like these people have all kinds of fun. I can imagine Abraham being 100 years old, having a baby. And God's going to ask him to give that baby up. Isaac is going to ask him to offer him as a sacrifice in 13 years. Okay. But within the boundaries of right, there's all kinds of joy. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Who's the most miserable people you know? People have no boundaries. Is that right? The people that are protest at the drop of the hat on anything. They hate America. They hate where they live. They hate their family. They hate everything about life. They're the victims of life, whatever it is. Most of those people are brought up with no boundaries whatsoever. I mean, there's rude people. I met a guy one day that Tam and I were at a funeral home, and some guy talked down to his wife like he's a king and she's a servant, and I was like, you idiot, you're a jerk. That's not boundaries. That's rudeness. Okay, that's dictatorship, not leadership, whatever. But within the boundaries of right, Charlie, we have all kinds of fun. Okay, and how long does that last? At least till we're 100, or till we pass, right? Okay. Any questions on that? What's Sarah mean? What's Sarah mean? No, that's Isaac. She's laughing. What's Sarai mean? Sarai. Contentious. Contentious. What does Isaac mean? Laughter. What does Abram mean? Or Abraham, either one, pick one. Abram, exalted father. Very good. Y'all listen, that's good. Okay, very good. Any questions about that? Is that an easy lesson? That's not even our lesson for tonight. I mean, we'll get to our lesson in just a minute. Any questions about that at all? Does that make sense to y'all? The first 5 minutes, the boys didn't want to sit still. Josiah didn't want to sit still. I mean, they're boys being boys. Josiah, Carter, Connor was focused, but it takes a while for them to get to where they're focused. Okay, but after about 5 minutes, they did really well. They were focused in on. The girls did too. They all did well. Okay, sometimes boys are harder for them to focus at times. that right? Is Trey that way compared to Raylan? Yeah. Okay, but okay. But sometimes hard to get. But once you get the attention, they do. They can understand that. We understand. Who wants to have joy all your life, right? That doesn't sound like fun. I saw. I was in town yesterday. A building that I went to. I've been going in there for a year, every week for a year, and I got the reception desk, and the lady at the desk said, "I've got to call someone down to escort you through the building." It's because recently someone got in, should have been in downtown building, so someone's got to escort you through the building. So this guy that I talk to casually every week as I pass by his cubicle, he had to walk with me through the building. Found out he's getting married next year. We had a conversation that, where do you go to church? Where do you live? I mean, I'm asking him a question. He's asking me questions. So we had this conversation, and he's getting married next year. And he said that. I said, "Damn it!" So my wife and I've been married 40 years. He said, "What's the secret?" Because he already told me when in church. And I said, "Get in church, stay in church, serve God." I said, a lot of people, the dating years you're dating, and dating and engaged years, a lot of people think that life is about sitting there across from just staring at each other, right? Oh, you see, she's so beautiful, whatever. But it's really about facing the same direction, right? Abraham and Sarah going in the same direction. She didn't know where they're going. Actually, he didn't know where they're going most of the time. She just packed, but pulled the pegs up out of the ground to the tent when there was just three of them going somewhere. But it's facing the same direction. Does that make sense? This young man, I don't say kid, the young man's asking questions. Here we go. Okay, let's witness as much as we can. Okay, comments, questions? Okay, we didn't pray yet. Anybody got any prayer requests? Okay. He was getting kind of dizzy or something every time he sat up, tried to walk on it. Good. Very good. So anybody listening at home, Marlon's home from the hospital, if you want to fix something, bring it over to him. Don't fix a lot of stuff, bring half of it to Marlon, half of it to me. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, so Marlon's home from the hospital after knee replacement surgery, doing good. Okay, anybody else with prayer requests? Okay. Marie for continual healing in her leg. Okay. So mean you gotta start walking all the time? Like, okay. Yeah, because it hurt so much you didn't want to walk before surgery. It says the strength is gone. So you get strength back. Yeah. Okay. Okay, pray for Marie for strength and Patsy, Marie's sister, and Cindy her son-in-law. My aunt that passed away 2 weeks ago, her daughter, which is my age, her yesterday, I guess, her daughter and son-in-law, their house burned to the ground. They live out in Montana, and they lost everything they have, including the 4 pets that were in the house.